What are we doing today?
I think we're going to start trying to frame in the windows, hopefully. We'll see how it goes.
Hi, I'm Dani, this is Toryn, and we're turning this lifeboat into a liveaboard. These are going to be our window frames. We've ordered glass and we're going to make plywood in the shape of the glass we bought to be our fake windows.
So we're going to cut out our window size of our window frame on here, and then we'll attach the outside to the outside of this.
So the reason we had to do this was because the boat, of course, as we know, is not exactly flat, but the glass is. So by using plywood as a stand-in for the glass, we were able to make sure that our frame was angled such that it would account for the difference in the boat and be ready to accept the flat glass. Before we could install our angled fiberglass to be the frame, we had to build up the sides of the boat so that it was all going to be flat and even once everything was glued together. To do that, we started by cutting some strips of plywood to help raise the level of the boat to that of the fiberglass frame.
I wonder if we should just cut a bunch of 3.5-inch strips and
Layer them.
We just make their outline and we'll frame this in later. We'll figure out.
Okay. Because those are 3.5 up there, right?
Yeah, everything's 2x4 except for this. So.
Yeah.
Quality.
Yeah. Craftsmen, Canadians will appreciate the throwback brand.
Appreciate that. Does Sears even exist anymore?
I don't think so. The one at Hillside's turning into a Walmart, not an IKEA. If you're from Victoria or the area, you might remember the rumors that IKEA was finally coming to the island. Of course, that hasn't happened yet, but you can hear I was pretty bitter and still kind of am, if we're being honest. Once those strips of marine grade plywood were cut, we epoxied them on and tacked them down with brad nails. And as you can see, all we're doing is bringing the level of the framework that we'd built up so that it's the same height as the wall to the right of Toryn and also the rest of the boat to the left of him. So she's not perfect, but we wanted her to be as flat and smooth as possible, and this was part of that process. So here Toryn is starting to make that wood act like glass. Like we mentioned, this was going to be the way that we tried to make sure that the not flat boat and the flat glass were able to form a good seal. Now, spoiler alert, we've had some issues with this, and while it's working now, I'm not sure that we would attach it the way that we did, which I think you'll see in an upcoming episode. But it was really hard to figure out what to do. Stodig, which is another lifeboat, some of you guys will know, it's big and yellow and very cool, and they are up in Norway. They have actually formed or cast acrylic that is sort of bent into place, bolted a million times. And initially we thought about doing something like that. Then we decided that we would rather have something that was a little bit easier to fix if it broke. So our thought being, we got this glass from an automotive company, we would always be able to do something like that. Always replace a piece of glass. It might be easier to replace than acrylic. We also wanted to avoid the crazing that acrylic can get, and so overall we decided that tempered laminated glass was the way to go, but it was not without its challenges. The funny thing is, I think I saw that the guys from Stodig said somewhere that those windows were the hardest thing they ever did and they wouldn't necessarily do it the same again, and At the time I was like, but they're so big and amazing, how can you say that? And now, having gone through this process, I can totally understand where they were coming from. Now that they're in and I've seen them, they're amazing, but it has been quite the challenge getting there. At this point here, Toryn has done a little bit of sanding, our fake glass is being cut out and routed, and we're getting ready to attach everything together. We needed to come up with that magic medium of what was going to be strong enough to hold it all together, but weak enough that at some point we could get it apart again.
So we can cut all those screws off, and then we should sand this surface so that it's got some bite to grip into.
At this point, we were getting our first real idea of just how big these pieces of glass were going to be. I was also really hoping I had measured correctly when I went to order the glass. But this piece, which is so big, I think is so cool. It sits over our kitchen and our dining area, and it lets so much light in. The views are just going to be amazing. After putting some 5200 on the frame, it was time to start putting them in place. This was a little bit stressful, but it turns out it was a great trial run for actually moving around the huge pieces of glass, because if I thought this was difficult to align, I had no idea what was coming up soon.
Temporarily hold it in place while we're waiting for the 5200 to dry. And then we'll take these all out, and then the frames get fiberglassed in place.
So back here, I've been using the jigsaw to cut these strips out, and some have the little rounded edge, and those are going to be filling in under the window there. So that will be the last layer to bring it up to the height of the window, and then we'll fiberglass that in and start fairing so that we have a nice smooth wall and not the various layers that we have now. I'm just gonna fill this gap in this plywood. We roughly cut the jigsaw to glue that in and then staple it, and then that'll be part of our walls to kind of flatten these gaps out. So Toryn's gonna work on making the thickened epoxy. You guys have seen lots of that already, so I won't show you any mixing. And in the meantime, I am taping this plastic stuff to the boat in a big roll just to protect our grating so that we don't get epoxy everywhere. So we've got this thickened epoxy Toryn's made up, and I'm gonna squish it in here. So, gooping update, because that was impossible to do with the camera. I have filled in all these gaps, and then we kind of started to even them out a little bit so that Toryn doesn't have to do quite as much sanding. But you can kind of see down here, all filled in. And then what are you gonna do next?
I'm gonna put fiberglass cloth down. Hopefully it'll still be squishy enough. I don't know what the technical term is. Not too hard so that I can force the cloth and keep it the right shape and everything, so I don't have to grind.
I went to go get lunch, and like Toryn said, he was able to put some fiberglass down over top of that kind of damp, thickened epoxy, except in this middle spot, which is so small that we just fill it all with fairing compound, right?
Yeah.
So
well, after the initial like thickened epoxy that's in there, and just a few epoxy layers, but then now we're just putting the fairing compound in.
Yes, so Toryn's mixing that up, and then I will smush it in there, and slowly we're smoothing out this boat.
We're fitting windows today.
Very exciting.
Of course, nothing on this boat actually is the same from side to side or anything, so it's more of a that's about right type situation than a measure and everything's exactly symmetrical, but that's okay.
We're trying to decide over here which angle we would like to be correct, because we can have 1.5 right, I think. So
I think that's about the best option right now.
Yeah. So I think it might be a little bit hard to tell what we're working on here, but this is the steering station, and sort of where Toryn's left elbow was the original forward-facing window. We've already taken the acrylic out here. And over my right shoulder is the original side-facing window. Now, of course, these boats weren't designed to cruise, so they didn't make use of every bit of window they possibly could. But we decided to do ourselves a favor, give ourselves a little bit more visibility, and cut these windows in on the 45-degree angles that join the front from the side of the steering station. So here's a sneak peek of the glass that we got, and we're actually just tracing around the piece that we have so we know that it fits well. We're going to use some wood to offset the size of a frame, and then we actually just fully surface mounted these, and of course you'll see that coming up in the next episode, but there's no frame for these smaller pieces, so a little bit different process to what you just saw in the bigger windows.
Sort of that's what our framework is, so not our actual framework, but just so we have a certain amount that the glass sits on, and this is about the right width that I wanted it, so I just trace around. And then I'll put nice little rads in the corners.
Using a solo cup as a
Of course.
template.
Gotta use a solo cup for everything, right?
It's a party boat. Before we wrap up today's episode, we have a quick question for viewers, especially those of you who have been around for a little while. Do you prefer today's episode where we gathered footage from one project together and shared it all at once, or the format of previous episodes where we take 2 weeks or a month's worth of footage and combine that together, bouncing back and forth between projects the way that we do in real time? Comment down below and let us know if you prefer one project at a time or the real-time project bounce, and we'll take that into consideration as we edit going forward. In the meantime, and no matter what, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and come back for an installation update where you'll see what those big pieces of glass look like sitting atop Luya. I love them, and I hope you guys do too. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.